Hello everybody and welcome to the DisruptAbility Podcast. Today's interview is with Cara Gibbons. She is a psychotherapist from Galway and she acquired blindness as a young girl. I hope you enjoy listening to her story. Thank you for listening. Hello and welcome to the DisruptAbility Podcast. Today I'm absolutely delighted to introduce you to Cara Gibbons, who is a psychotherapist originally from County Clare but living and working in Galway. Hi Cara, how are you?
Hi Claire, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Brilliant and delighted to have you here with us today. Cara,
Delighted to be here.
Can you give our listeners a little bit of your background?
So like you said, I'm from Clare and I'm living in Galway. I'm blind, totally blind, that's my disability, from having glaucoma. So just very quickly, when I was 9, I was perfectly healthy up until I was 9, and then I took an over-the-counter cough medicine, had a massive allergic reaction and got Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and ended up in hospital in Crumlin for a couple of months, and blah blah blah, long story, but it scarred all my mucous membranes, and the worst affected areas were my eyes and my lungs. So from then on, I suppose I was in and out of hospital, different eye operations, my corneas were scarred. And then when I was 17 or 18, they discovered I had glaucoma. I'd kind of switched doctors and stuff like that, so it hadn't been detected up until then. And by the time I was 19, they said that they couldn't save my sight. So I lost my sight completely then between the ages of 19 and 20. So by 20, I was completely blind. I don't have light perception or anything. So
wow,
that's kind of my medical background anyway.
That's the medical background, pretty stark. And where were you at 19? Were you already in college?
Yeah, I'd started college. I was doing physiology and health science in Carlow. I wanted to be a physiotherapist. So I was doing a certificate course in Carlow and I lost my sight kind of towards the end of first year, I think. They were telling me that they couldn't do anything.
All right. And then did you change degrees? Did you change your course of study or?
No, I continued on. So it was a 2-year certificate, but what I did was I ended up kind of doing it over 3 years instead. So I had to change from learning everything, from reading and writing to listening and speaking. And I had really good help. Carlo IT were fantastic. My friends were really good, really helpful. And I suppose I was a student, I was partying a lot, probably partying too much, but I wasn't dealing with things. But I got my certificate in 3 years instead of 2. And then I moved to Aberdeen in Scotland to do physiotherapy. So I was doing physio I was there for 2 years and really struggling. I think I was struggling with the whole losing my sight and not coping, not accepting it. So I dropped out of the physio after 2.5 years and was a bit lost then. Not really sure what I was going to do, but one of my subjects in physio was health psychology. So I spoke to the head of physio and I was asking her advice, and she said psychology might be a good route. So I moved to Edinburgh then and did a 4-year degree in health psychology in Edinburgh. And I suppose for me it was all that time between Carlow and Edinburgh was just a long time of adjustment, acceptance, depression, not coping, then finally learning how to cope. So it was, and I'd been in and out of counselling all those years, but I went to see a really good CBT therapist when I was in Edinburgh, and I think at that stage I was ready to really deal with things. And I suppose for me that's when I fully started to accept, who I was now as this unsighted person.
And is that what you'd say helped you when you said learning how to cope? Was it the psychotherapy, the counselling and the CBT counselling that helped you?
Yeah, definitely. That and time, because I think for me anyway, I know people adjust to things, very differently. But for me, it really took me about 8 years of struggling and fighting and not wanting to be this way. And I suppose I was maybe quite ambitious, career-wise, and I'd always wanted to be a physio, and I know there are blind physios there, but just with the the studying side of it and being in busy hospital wards, I just found that really tough. And then not knowing what I wanted to do, because that's all I'd ever wanted to do, So I think towards the end of my time in Edinburgh, when I started to kind of accept that, I suppose what I learned to accept was that it was okay to feel frustrated and okay to be kind of upset sometimes, where I kept thinking, I have to get over this.
That is so true. I can identify with that.
Yeah.
You kind of think if one day you can accept it, then why can't, a week later, if you're having a bad day, you're like, why am I frustrated? I'm okay with this. I've accepted this, but then you have a bad day, and I think it's accepting that those bad days will come and being okay with the bad days.
100%. And I used to kind of say, accepting this means that I'll be fine and happy and everything will be grand and I'll be delighted to be a blind person, but that's not reality.
And life in itself can be hard. It mightn't even be the blindness, it's what's happening in life can have an impact on you, and because of the way we might react because we're vision impaired or blind is different. So what happened after that? You did your undergraduate in Scotland. Did you continue with your master's in Scotland as well?
No, after that I was going to do my master's in Scotland, but I think I needed a break from studying because I've been studying for, I suppose, nearly 10 years, I think, at that stage. So I moved home to Clare and just spent a year kind of figuring out what I was going to do next. So I decided anyway to continue doing my master's. It was a master's in health psychology in Galway. So that's when I moved to Galway to do the master's in health psychology. And I suppose part of what drew me to this area was one of my placements in physio was on a stroke ward. And I suppose because I was adjusting to losing my sight and that massive life change, I was seeing how someone getting a stroke, what a massive psychological impact that has, as well as like a physical impact, So that's why the whole idea of health psychology and that adjustment to illness appeals to me, because it was so relevant to me personally, but also I had experienced it on placement with other people.
Okay.
So that's what drew me to that area. So I did the master's in Galway, really enjoyed it. Very, very tough, but it was very interesting. And then I was kind of spat out into the big bad world after being like in that kind of cocoon of education for so long, and went on the job hunt, which wasn't very easy. It's not easy in psychology anyway. That's one thing to note for sure. To try and get a job as an assistant psychologist is really, really tough. There are very few. They're mostly unpaid. I know there's kind of groups that are trying to change that at the moment. So I struggled away trying to apply for different kind of assistant psychology positions. And also I kind of knew my limitations in regards to mobility and, not kind of, I didn't really want to move from Galway, which I suppose to some people might have sounded like kind of was to my detriment. But it's hard to kind of move to another new place and learn more new mobility skills that I already kind of lived in, a different country in 2 different cities. And so I kind of had made that choice for myself, and you see it a lot on the kind of the threads for assistant psychologists that people would move to anywhere in the country to get a job. So I already knew I was limited in where I was living, and there are fewer positions in the west of Ireland than there would be, say, in Dublin. So that's kind of a struggle for people doing psychology anyway. And of course then I had the added kind of struggle of not having any sight. So when there weren't many assistant psychology positions coming up, I looked into the voluntary sector. And again, this is a huge thing in psychology, that there's a lot of volunteer work. You do a lot of grafting and working for free before you ever get some money in your pocket. Mm-hmm. But I thought, okay, that's fine. I'll send out loads of speculative CVs to different places, and surely someone will take me on because I'm offering to work for free. But that didn't really work either. So in a lot of cases, it had nothing to do with my sight. It was just the level of where I was. I suppose I was very educated, but maybe didn't have very much practical experience. That went against me. But there were 1 or 2 examples where it was actual discrimination. And I do remember one organisation in particular that I was applying, and it was a voluntary position, and I knew I had the skill set to do the job, I guess. And there was kind of a couple of workarounds that would have needed to have been done, but I just felt like it wasn't a straightforward process. You know, I filled out the application and it did say if you have disabilities, so I put that in the application. And rather than just, you know, going through the levels, you know, somebody came and it came down specifically to speak to me because of my disability. So I went and spoke to them and I said, look, I really think I'm suited for this position, and this is why, and this is what I have done. And so I thought that's great. They seemed pretty happy. And then they went away, and about a week or so later, I got a call from the manager. And again, I was just starting to feel like, oh, here we go. Like, it's just, they kept pointing out, oh, well, I don't know, could you do this? And how could you do this? And this is even just in the training part, not in the job itself. But everything that every kind of barrier they were putting up, I was like, oh, well, I'd definitely be able to do that. I've done that in college. Or there was just kind of, I kept feeling like I was having to prove myself. I think that was a lot of it, just constantly having to prove myself. And in the end, I was allowed onto the training. But I took the decision then not to do it, because I felt that even though they'd let me onto the training, I still felt that they wouldn't let me do the position afterwards.
Was it the attitude? Did you feel it wasn't an inclusive attitude, that it was almost too difficult for them to have you?
Yeah, and it was almost like they were putting barriers there that I was like, oh no, that's actually something I can do, you know. And not, I suppose what I felt was that they were coming to me with barriers rather than coming to me and asking, how can we make this possible for you? If that makes sense.
Totally. So when you didn't take that position, did you go on to do your second master's?
Yeah, so I did get a position. It was like a voluntary, it was an assistant receptionist in a counselling centre in Galway. And I wasn't able to do a whole lot. You know, I answered the phones and took a few notes and stuff. And sometimes I felt like I was in the receptionist way a lot of the time. But it just felt so nice to be given that chance. And this was about like 2 years of searching, you know. So I was given a chance there, and that really kind of, I suppose, boosted my confidence and my sense that I could do things. Because you do, like, when you're not working for so long, you really start to doubt, God, can I do anything? Do you know, am I suited to just be a student? And then beyond that, you know, I have nothing to offer. So, and counselling had always kind of been in the back of my mind as a career path, because you have to be an assistant psychologist before you can do clinical psychology. So that wasn't really working out for me. So working in that centre and seeing all the other counsellors and psychotherapists coming in and out, I was like, okay, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. So so let me think now. I finished my master's in NUIG in 2012, and I started the master's in Limerick in 2015. So there's 3 years of just trying and failing and trying and failing, and then I said, okay, I'm just going to go back and do a master's that had a practical and placement element to it.
And that was when you did a master's in counselling?
In counselling and psychotherapy, yeah.
And tell us through that, because I think it was because of that master's you did some research, and I heard you speak at an NCBI seminar, and I was very impressed with the research that you did all around self-identity. You might talk to us a little bit around that.
Yeah, so the research I did for the master's dissertation was on psychological well-being in visual impairment in Ireland. And so it was a two-part. I had statistics and interviews, and it's based around kind of accessing counselling and things like that as well. But one of the themes that came out of the interviews was this whole theme of acceptance and identity, and the idea of starting to learn to accept this new identity, especially for those who had acquired their visual impairments. I interviewed both people who were born blind, and there was still a sense of kind of acceptance around people who are born blind as well. Maybe not obvious, you know, but the sense of, I suppose, accepting themselves in a society where disability isn't the norm, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. And is there a magic answer? How does one accept oneself?
No, unfortunately, I don't think there's a magic answer. I don't know, but I think a lot of it is time. Time. I suppose for me and for other people as well. I think in the interview, there's the idea of trying to stay the way you were. So I used to kind of almost play a game where I'd be like, okay, how long will it take for them to get the can't see? And the longer it took them, I felt like I'd won. If that makes sense, because then it was like, oh, they don't know that I can't see, so that means I come across as normal. And I think a lot of people kind of who are losing their sight will walk down the street and they might be able to see their neighbours saying hello to them, but they might, just keep going and pretend that they can see what's happening. And one person in the interview said that a neighbour thought he was becoming quite rude, that he wasn't saluting her, but it was that he couldn't see her. And what came across with all of the participants who talked about this idea of acceptance and identity was when they did start to, acknowledge, okay, to acknowledge to themselves first and then be able to say to other people, I am struggling, I'm finding it a lot harder to see, that then people were much more willing to help, first of all, because first they knew that somebody needed help, and that people didn't, I suppose, shun us, but because there's that feeling of being rejected, when you admit that you're different. But it certainly in my experience and in the people I interviewed, their experiences of when they took that step to actually say, do you know what, I actually can't see very well, the amount of people who were like, oh, okay, that either explains a lot, or is there anything that we can do to help? And it made the transition so much easier.
So it's that awareness in society and, people disclosing and letting their colleagues or their neighbours know, this is what I'm struggling with. And then you might get the support or the understanding, or there'll be more awareness in general around it.
Exactly, yeah. And the disclosing, I couldn't think of the words at the time, but that idea of disclosing, you almost feel like you're sharing this big secret or something, and that by disclosing, then you have to admit to yourself that there's something different.
And that's a big step for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and so you finished your master's, and did you find work straight away then, Cara?
Yeah, it's funny. I was having a conversation with somebody a few weeks ago, and I was saying to them how lucky I am. I say I feel so lucky. At the moment, I have loads of work. And it's fantastic. And she was saying to me, she said, "Well, it's not luck, Cara. Like you really did put in a lot of work as well. But I suppose I feel lucky now that I'm in a position where I'm working loads. So again, because I did a master's that had a placement in it, so we had to do student hours. And again, that was tough enough to try and find hours. Again, not because of my disabilities, just the nature of the area I'm in, sometimes it's hard to get work. But I was very lucky. The place that I had volunteered as a receptionist, I got my student hours there. And from then, like, work has kind of come to me, if that makes sense, rather than me having to go and find it.
And do you love what you do?
Pardon?
Do you love what you do?
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, it can be hard going at times, but it's incredibly rewarding. And I definitely think I went into the right career, even though in some ways it wasn't ever my first choice. Physio was always my first choice, and it kind of just evolved, I guess, into this work.
And do you work with people with disabilities, or are you working in a practice where it's all kinds of people coming in for counselling?
So I'm self-employed, so I work in different organizations. At the moment, I'm working in 3 different organizations, and one of those is with blind and visually impaired people.
Okay.
Yeah, and other than that, I work with teenagers and adults of all shapes and sizes.
And different backgrounds, etc. And disability might be part of the story, but it mightn't be the main part of the story.
Yeah. And it has been for some clients, yeah.
Okay. So what are your plans for the future then, Cara?
I suppose at the moment I'm quite happy where I'm at. I think I'm happy with the level of client work I have. I've done a bit of lecturing this year and last year, and that's something I've really enjoyed. So maybe a bit more of that. I've run a few workshops. So I think I like I suppose, the diversity in the work I'm doing at the moment. And I'm still kind of exploring, the areas, because I'll be fully accredited after Christmas. So I suppose I'm still pretty early in this career, if that makes sense. So I'm still kind of finding my feet and working with different client types and doing the workshops and lecturing and doing a bit of everything for now. And then maybe in time, I suppose I might try and tighten it up a little bit and put a bit more structure on what I'm doing. But for now, I think I'm happy with where I'm at.
And enjoying the life in Galway, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it's a great city, so you're in the right place.
Yeah.
Have you any advice for employers around disability and hiring disability and making it work in the workplace?
Yeah, I suppose going from the people who have hired me, I guess, the one thing I noticed about all of them is they listened. They listened to what I can offer, what I might need some help with, and we kind of worked together on, the things that might be a little bit tricky. I'm looking in some of the places I work, everything is digital, it's all online, whereas the place is still kind of pen and paper stuff. So we were able to work around those kind of things, and that's where I really noticed that's how it works when it works, if that makes sense. So yeah. Like for my CV, I don't disclose on my CV actually when I apply for jobs. That's just a personal decision, because I want to get to an interview stage on the merit of my education and my experience. And then what I do is I call, this is kind of in the past for voluntary positions more so than at the moment, but I call and just let them know, look, by the way, I'm blind and I have a guide dog, and then go to the interview and see what happens from there. But I feel that for me personally, I just want to get to interview stage based on my CV and cover letter.
You've really brought up a very interesting point there, Cara, because disclosure is a huge issue, isn't it? It's a hot topic for people with disabilities, and especially for people with hidden disabilities. But when you're even on the point of your CV, do you say it on your CV, or, as you say, do you wait till interview stage and then maybe look for some kind of accommodation or during the interview stage? I was talking to someone recently who is deaf, and they used to have the name of their school, which said it was a school for the deaf in the CV, and they weren't getting any interviews. They removed the fact, they just left it at St. Mary's, but removed school for the deaf. And then they got interviews, and then they finally got a job. Yeah. So isn't that terrible in 2019 that we're still at that stage?
Yeah. But I suppose, like, for anybody else, anybody who has, I don't know, differences about them, like, your CV is supposed to represent, your ability to do a job, not your disability status, your socioeconomic status, your marital status,
Yeah, but I think we still have a mini-me syndrome in this country, where people want to hire people like themselves, and when someone is different, there's a bit of fear around it, whereas it should be the opposite. You should actually hire someone who is different than you, because if everyone thinks like you, your organization isn't going to be successful. It's people bringing diversity together, and that will help with innovation and new thinking and bring it forward, bring you into a new place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Do you have any advice for young people, say students with disabilities, and carving out their career?
I suppose, thinking back on everything, one of the main things I'd say is don't give up. There were so many times in those 3 years between my 2 masters when I just wanted to give up. I was like, it's too hard, too many doors being closed in my face. And the thing is, I'd get like a little glimpse of hope. So I did some voluntary work in the university with an online CBT course, and that was really interesting. And then I thought, oh, great, that's something to add to my CV now. And then it wasn't enough, or there was still other barriers. And what I kept doing is trying to look for, can I maybe do this mini course or that mini course? So I suppose one of the things is don't give up, keep trying. And I think what really helped for me was doing something that had a placement element to it. So, when you're in college, if possible, and it's not always possible, but definitely doing a course that kind of sets you up on a placement, because then it shows you, if you've done it in college, it's so much easier to do it outside of college. You've already kind of had that grounding.
That is, so you have the practical experience. But
Yeah.
Cara, what kept you going during those 3 years of having, as you say, doors closing in your face? Like, how did you keep going?
I don't know. Like, this is kind of funny, but at one stage I was like, I'm just going to give up on the career thing, and I just want to like get married and be a housewife, and that'll be fine. And then I was in a relationship, and after a couple of months I was like, actually this isn't enough. I need a job. So I think that kind of pushed me as well. I suppose, turning my back on career and thinking, okay, I'll just give up on it and not do anything. And then, I said, oh, a relationship will fix everything. And I thought that would be fine. And then I discovered from that, I was like, no, this isn't fixing everything. And I suppose it showed me then how much I really wanted a career.
Yeah, and you can have both. I mean, you can have a relationship and have a career, it's not like one or the other.
Yeah, but the relationship wasn't enough for me. I was like, no, there's something missing. Yeah.
No, you're a very driven person, and you're an educated woman, and why wouldn't you want to have a career, etc.
Yeah, and it's just that sense of, there'd be days that I'd be walking around, like say in the summertime, and people would say, oh, it's lovely to be off in the summer, and I was like, I'm not off, I'm unemployed. There's a big difference. And just walking around feeling like, because you want to contribute to society and just not feel like you're just existing.
It's so true. And you know what, Cara, the statistics in Ireland are awful. I mean, it's only like 30% of people with disabilities are working. So we're in the minority.
Yeah.
And that needs to change.
Another piece of advice I'd give to young people is volunteer. Like, volunteering is so beneficial. Like, most of my groundwork kind of experience was through volunteering. And even though you're not getting the kind of the financial reward, you're definitely getting the reward of feeling like that you're contributing something.
Okay, that's really good. And we have a volunteer centre here. I think it's on North Main Street in Cork City. Have you got one in Galway as well?
Yeah, there's one. They're all over the country.
Yeah. So well worth for any student if they want to contribute to society and build up their CV and get all kinds of experience.
Exactly, and you kind of learn a lot about what you can do and what's difficult, so that when you do go to an employer, you're bringing experience with you.
Okay. Well, listen, Cara, that's great advice. And thank you so much for your time today. And I know you have a hectic schedule to get back to, and all your clients. And I hope to meet you again soon at another NCBI seminar, because that's where we met initially, was with the National Council for the Blind of Ireland. And you have a wealth of information, and thank you for sharing it with us today on the DisruptAbility Podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye-bye.